The alarms had been screaming for 17 minutes. Site Director Maria Espinosa stood in the emergency command center, watching her facility tear itself apart on a dozen monitor feeds. Coffee spilled across tactical displays as another explosion rocked the underground complex. "Status report," she barked. "CP-682 breached containment at 0347 hours, her chief of security reported, voice tight with barely controlled panic. Acid bath failed. The entity adapted, dissolved the containment tank from inside. 106? Emerged through the wall of its containment chamber. Pocket dimension is expanding. We've lost contact with Wing D entirely. 096? A pause. Someone on the research team looked at a photograph. 096 is active. It's already killed 14 personnel, and it's still. The feed from Corridor 12B cut to static as something pale and screaming tore through a blast door like tissue paper. Maria closed her eyes. In her 15 years with the Foundation, she'd overseen hundreds of containment incidents. Minor breaches, isolated failures, manageable disasters. This wasn't manageable. "Activate Protocol Omega-7, she said quietly. "Full site evacuation. We're losing Site 19. Ma'am, the O5 Council. The O5 Council isn't here watching 3 Keter-class SCPs simultaneously loose. I am. Activate the protocol." On the monitors, SCP-682, the so-called hard-to-destroy reptile, rampaged through the biological research wing. The creature had grown since its breach, adaptive evolution triggered by combat stress. It was now the size of a battle tank, scales gleaming with unnatural resilience, jaws that could bite through reinforced steel. Mobile Task Force Epsilon 11 engaged it with everything they had: heavy machine guns, rocket launchers, experimental plasma weapons that cost more than a fighter jet. 682 shrugged off the barrage, its reptilian eyes burning with malevolent intelligence and infinite hatred for all life. Disgusting. It roared in a voice that bypassed human ears and resonated directly in the brain. Hideous. Weak. I will kill you all. Every last crawling piece of filth. I will devour your species and dance in the ashes. An MTF operative fired a shoulder-mounted rocket directly into the creature's open maw. The explosion was spectacular. Fire, smoke, the concussive blast threw personnel backward. When the smoke cleared, 682 stood unharmed. Its jaw had regenerated mid-explosion. It smiled a horrible expression on a reptilian face. "Was that your best? Pathetic." It lunged forward and bit an MTF soldier in half. In Wing D, SCP-106, the old man phased through walls like they were suggestions rather than barriers. Its corroded, rotting form left trails of decay wherever it touched. Personnel who came too close simply vanished, dragged, screaming into the entity's pocket dimension, a place of endless decay, eternal suffering, no escape. One researcher made the mistake of shooting 106 with a standard-issue pistol. The bullets passed through harmlessly. The old man's face, a nightmare of rotting flesh and black eyes, split into a grin. It reached forward. The researcher's scream cut off as reality folded around him, and he was gone. And somewhere in the facility's eastern section, SCP-096, the shy guy sprinted through corridors at speeds approaching 60 miles per hour. Its elongated limbs propelled it with inhuman efficiency toward anyone who'd seen its face. It didn't matter if you saw a photograph, a video feed, a reflection, even a computer-generated approximation. If you saw its face, it would find you. And when it did, it would kill you. Nothing had ever stopped it. Nothing had ever slowed it down. On the monitors, Maria watched 096 catch another victim. The killing was efficient, brutal, over in seconds. Then 096 turned and sprinted toward its next target. "How many?" Maria asked quietly. "Confirmed casualties, 47 personnel. Estimated casualties in quarantine sections, another 60. Her security chief swallowed hard. "Ma'am, we need to evacuate now. If these 3 entities converge, they won't converge. They'll spread. 682 will rampage until we hit it with something it can't adapt to. 106 will claim victims until we can lure it back to containment. And 096, she trailed off. 096 won't stop until it's killed everyone who saw its face. Then what do? We buy time. We sacrifice whoever we must. And we pray the O5 Council authorizes a strategic weapon before this spreads beyond the facility. That's when the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in after 3 seconds, bathing everything in red. And in that darkness, something else arrived. The first sign was the sound. Not an alarm. Not an explosion. A sound, like reality itself, was tearing. A screaming whine that bypassed ears and vibrated directly in the bones of every living thing in Site-19. On the monitors, every camera feed distorted simultaneously. Static, interference patterns that hurt to look at. Then light, golden light, pouring from nowhere, flooding the central courtyard where nothing should exist except concrete and guard towers. Maria stared at the feeds. What the hell is that? The light intensified until cameras automatically dimmed to prevent sensor damage. And in that light, space itself folded, tore, opened. A rift, not a door, not a portal. A wound in reality, bleeding impossible colors and geometric shapes that made rational thought difficult. And through that wound, something stepped. He was massive, 14 feet tall, encased in golden armor that seemed to be crafted from solidified light itself. The armor was ornate beyond description. Eagles and laurels, lightning bolts and stars, every surface inscribed with words and languages that predated human civilization. But it was his face that stopped every person watching. It was human, ageless, neither young nor old. Eyes that burned with intelligence accumulated across millennia. A face that radiated absolute authority, absolute power, absolute certainty. The Emperor of mankind had arrived. His presence was overwhelming. Psychic pressure radiated from him in waves, a force of pure will so intense that reality itself seemed to bend. The air shimmered. Space compressed. And every person in Site-19, thousands of personnel across dozens of wings felt it. Felt him. In the command center, Maria grabbed the edge of her console to stay upright. The pressure was crushing. Not physical, mental, like standing before something so vast, so powerful, that your mind couldn't quite process it. What is that? Someone whispered. I don't know, but tag it. New SCP designation, highest priority. The Emperor stood in the courtyard for a moment, his gaze sweeping across the facility. Those ancient eyes took in everything, the architecture, the personnel, the contained anomalies radiating wrongness from their cells. When he spoke, his voice carried across the entire facility without technological amplification. It simply was, heard by everyone simultaneously. I am humanity's guardian. I am its shepherd. I am the Emperor of mankind. The psychic pressure intensified. Several personnel collapsed, overwhelmed, and I sense abominations that must be purged. He began walking, not toward any exit, directly toward the central facility where the breached SCPs rampaged. Every step he took left a faint golden afterimage. Every surface he passed seemed cleaner, somehow, more real, as if his mere presence drove back wrongness. All units, Maria ordered, converge on the courtyard. We need to... She stopped, because on Monitor 7, she watched SCP-682 turn toward the courtyard. The reptile's head snapped around, its adaptive senses detecting something. What is that? 682's voice boomed across the facility. What? No. Impossible. That presence. I know that presence. For the first time in Foundation records, SCP-682 sounded uncertain, almost afraid. It cannot be. Not here. Not in this reality. 682 stopped its rampage and charged toward the courtyard, not hunting prey, responding to a threat, The hard-to-destroy reptile was going to engage the golden figure. Maria leaned forward. All cameras on the courtyard. Record everything. We're about to see if our indestructible SCP is actually indestructible. SCP-682 burst through a reinforced wall like it was cardboard, its massive bulk skidding to a halt in the courtyard 50 meters from the Emperor. The creature had grown even larger in the last few minutes, stress-induced evolution pushing it to tank size. Scales like armor plating, claws that could shred steel, jaws that had bitten through every material the Foundation could test. It stared at the Emperor with eyes that burned with hatred for all living things. "You," 682 growled. "I know what you are. The anathema, the corpse-worshipped false god. You should not be here." The Emperor stopped walking, his gaze focused on 682 with the intensity of a laser. "Abomination," he said simply. "You are a creature of chaos, warped by the ruinous powers. I have killed 1,000,000 of your kind across 10,000 worlds. I am not your chaos. I am superior. I am evolution. I am the end of your weak species. No, you are familiar. I have seen your template before. In the Eye of Terror, in the Ghoul Stars, in warp-touched zones where reality bleeds." The Emperor's voice was utterly calm, clinical. "You are an echo of the enslaver plague, a creature sustained by hatred and fed by suffering, a parasite wearing flesh." 682 roared. The sound was psychic as much as physical, a blast of pure rage that would have driven normal humans insane. The Emperor didn't even blink. "You do not frighten me. You do not impress me. You are simply another Xenos abomination that must be eliminated for humanity's survival." Maka laughed again. 682 charged. The creature covered 50 meters in under 2 seconds, moving with speed that defied its bulk. Claws extended, jaws open wide enough to bite the Emperor in half. The Emperor didn't move. 682's claw, capable of shearing through tank armor, struck the Emperor's breastplate and stopped, completely, utterly, as if it had struck an immovable object. The impact sent shockwaves through the courtyard. Concrete cracked, dust billowed. The air itself seemed to compress from the force. The Emperor stood unmoved. His armor didn't even dent. 682 pulled back, confusion flickering across its reptilian features. It struck again, and again. Each blow powerful enough to demolish a building. The Emperor tanked them all without moving an inch. "Are you finished?" the Emperor asked. 682's eyes widened, an expression of shock the Foundation had never seen on the creature. Then the Emperor moved. His right hand shot forward faster than 682 could react, closing around the creature's throat. The Emperor lifted 682 off the ground, one-handed, holding the multi-ton reptile in the air like it weighed nothing. "You are not indestructible," the Emperor said. "You simply have not encountered true power before." 682 thrashed, its adaptive evolution kicking into overdrive. Its body began changing, growing spikes to impale the Emperor's arm, secreting acids to burn through his gauntlet, mutating into forms designed to escape any grip. None of it worked. The Emperor's psychic power activated. Golden light erupted from his hand, flooding into 682's body. This wasn't fire, wasn't energy. It was pure anathema to everything. 682 was psychic force designed to burn out corruption at a fundamental level. 682 screamed. It was a sound of agony unlike anything the creature had ever made. In all its years of containment through acid baths, incineration, being shot into the sun in simulations, 682 had never screamed like that. "I see you now," the Emperor said, his psychic vision piercing through 682's physical form to the wrongness beneath. "You are not truly alive. You are animated by a fragment of warp energy, a splinter of the immaterium given terrible purpose." His grip tightened. "And I am the master of mankind, the anathema to chaos, the force that has held back the ruinous powers for 10,000 years." The golden light intensified. 682's body began to burn. Not with normal fire, but with psychic flame that consumed the very essence of what it was. The warp fragment animating it was being destroyed, severed from reality itself. No. 682's voice was fading. I am eternal. I cannot die. I have survived everything. I am— You are nothing, the Emperor said. And now, you are ended. The golden fire reached critical intensity. SCP-682, the hard-to-destroy reptile. The creature that had survived every termination attempt the Foundation had devised burned away to ash in the Emperor's grip. When the light faded, nothing remained. Not bones, not scales, not even dust. Complete annihilation. The Emperor lowered his hand, looking at where 682 had been with mild interest. Crude, he assessed, but effective as a biological weapon. The Rangda employed similar creatures during Old Night. They too believed themselves unkillable. They were wrong. In the command center, Maria stared at the monitors in absolute silence. SCP-682 was dead. Permanently. The creature they'd spent decades trying to contain, trying to understand, trying to find any weakness in erased in under 3 minutes by the golden figure. "Ma'am," her security chief whispered. What do we do?" Maria didn't have an answer. On the monitors, the Emperor was already walking deeper into the facility, toward where SCP-096 was still hunting. SCP-096 ran through Corridor 7 Alpha at 63 miles per hour, its elongated limbs propelling it with mechanical efficiency. Someone had seen its face. A researcher in Sector C. The entity's anomalous compulsion activated, overriding all else. It would reach that person. It would kill them. Nothing would stop it. Nothing ever had. The creature turned a corner and found the Emperor standing in its path. 096 didn't slow, didn't hesitate. The compulsion was absolute. It charged directly at the Emperor, seeing him only as an obstacle between it and its target. The Emperor stood still, studying the approaching entity with clinical interest. 096 reached him and swung both elongated arms in a strike that had pulverized reinforced blast doors. The Emperor caught both arms, one in each hand, held them effortlessly as 096's momentum drove it forward into an immovable grip. 096 screamed its signature cry of rage and anguish. It pulled, twisted, tried to break free. The entity possessed strength far beyond human limits, capable of tearing through steel. The Emperor's grip didn't budge. "Interesting," the Emperor said, his psychic senses analyzing 096's nature. "You are enslaved. Not by chaos, not by the warp, by something else, an anomalous law written into local reality itself." 096 thrashed harder, its pale face contorted in mindless rage. "You cannot help what you are, cannot choose your nature. The anomaly compels you to kill, and you obey without volition." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "I have seen similar curses, Gias-bound constructs, psychic automatons, tools rather than true threats." His psychic power flared. The Emperor's consciousness invaded 096's mind, not a subtle probe, but a direct assault that shattered mental barriers like glass. He saw the entity's true nature, saw the anomalous effect binding it, saw the reality-warping compulsion that drove its existence, and he severed it. Psychic energy surged through 096's form, targeting not the creature itself but the fundamental law that animated it. The Emperor's will honed across millennia, reinforced by genetic engineering and psychic mastery, simply rejected the anomaly's right to exist. Reality resisted. The anomaly was woven into local physics, a law as fundamental as gravity. The Emperor's will was stronger. The binding shattered. 096's scream cut off mid-cry. Its body went limp in the Emperor's grip, the anomalous compulsion that had driven it for decades suddenly gone. Without the anomaly, 096 was just flesh, just a biological construct with no purpose. It died instantly, its body collapsing in on itself as the force animating it disappeared. The Emperor released the corpse, letting it fall to the floor. What had been an unkillable SCP was now just dead tissue. Your foundation contains threats by holding them in boxes, the Emperor said to the empty corridor. But containment is not victory, it is postponed failure. He stepped over 096's corpse and continued walking. Behind him, alarm klaxons were still screaming. One more major threat remained loose. SCP-106. The Old Man. SCP-106 emerged from the wall of Corridor 12 Delta like oil seeping through concrete. The entity was ancient, malevolent. Its corroded, rotting form left trails of decay that ate through metal and stone. Its pocket dimension, a realm of endless suffering it dragged victims into, had claimed hundreds of personnel over the years. It sensed the Emperor approaching and smiled. This one was powerful. It could feel that, which meant dragging him into the pocket dimension would be enjoyable. 106 phased through the floor and emerged directly in front of the Emperor, blocking his path. Another victim, it rasped, voice like grinding rust. Another soul for my collection. The Emperor stopped and looked at 106 with something approaching curiosity. A pocket dimension, crude but functional. You exist partially outside standard space-time, anchored to reality through this physical form. He tilted his head. I have encountered similar entities, warp-touched creatures that straddle dimensions. They all died when I collapsed their anchors. 106 lunged forward, corrosive hands reaching for the Emperor. The moment 106 made contact, the entity's pocket dimension activated, attempting to drag the Emperor through reality into the hellscape beyond. The Emperor allowed it. He stepped forward into 106's realm, his golden form vanishing from the corridor. In the command center, Maria watched the feed go dark. We lost him. 106 took him into the pocket dimension. Then he's gone, her security chief said. No one escapes that dimension. Wait. Look. On a backup feed showing thermal imaging, something was happening in the area where 106 had been. Reality was fluctuating, distorting. Something was happening inside the pocket dimension. Inside 106's realm, the Emperor stood in an endless expanse of rust and decay. The dimension was more properly a fold in local reality, a pocket space sustained by 106's anomalous existence. Walls of corroded metal stretched infinitely. Puddles of corrosive fluid dotted the landscape. Distant screaming echoed from somewhere. 106 appeared from the rust, grinning. You're trapped now. This is my domain. You cannot escape. No one. This is pathetic, the Emperor interrupted. He looked around at the pocket dimension with evident disdain. A weak reflection of the warp. I have walked through the Eye of Terror, traversed the webway, stood in the presence of the Chaos Gods themselves. This, he gestured at the corroded hellscape, is nothing. 106's grin faltered. The Emperor raised his hand, and golden psychic power flooded the pocket dimension. You sustain this realm through your existence. Your anomalous nature creates a fold in reality, and that fold persists because local physics allow it. The Emperor's eyes blazed with power. But I do not accept local physics as absolute. His psychic might intensified, and the pocket dimension began to shake. 106 felt it immediately. Its realm was collapsing. Impossible. The pocket dimension was eternal. It had existed for decades. Nothing could destroy it. I have destroyed Daemon worlds, the Emperor said calmly. Collapsed warp rifts, sealed breaches in reality that would have consumed entire star systems. Your little pocket dimension is trivial in comparison. He clenched his fist. The pocket dimension imploded. Reality reasserted itself violently, the fold in space-time unable to withstand the Emperor's will. The endless rust collapsed. The corrosive puddles evaporated. The screaming stopped. And SCP-106, its existence tied to the pocket dimension, screamed as its very nature was torn apart. The Emperor stepped back into normal reality, emerging in Corridor 12 Delta exactly where he'd entered. Behind him, 106's physical form dissolved into nothingness. Without the pocket dimension, the entity couldn't exist. It had been fundamentally erased. The Emperor brushed a speck of rust from his armor. 3 abominations eliminated, he said to himself. How many more does this foundation contain? He walked toward the central facility, his psychic senses detecting thousands of anomalous presences. This will take time. In the O5 Council's emergency meeting chamber, a location unknown to anyone outside the council, 13 shadowy figures convened via holographic communication. They'd been watching Site-19's feeds. Watching the golden figure systematically eliminate SCPs that the Foundation had spent decades containing. O5-1 spoke first. 3 Keter-class entities. Neutralized permanently. In under 20 minutes. By a single individual. 682 is confirmed destroyed? O5-7 asked. Complete molecular annihilation. No trace remains. Our sensors detected a psychic energy spike during termination that exceeded anything in our records. 096 neutralized. O5-3 added. The entity appears to have severed the anomalous effect binding the SCP at a fundamental level. Without the compulsion, it simply died. And 106? Pocket dimension collapsed. Total spatial anomaly failure. The entity ceased to exist when its dimensional anchor was destroyed. Silence. O5-4 finally spoke. We need to classify this being immediately. Assign containment protocols. Determine threat level. Containment? O5-9's voice dripped with skepticism. Did you watch the same feeds I did? That being tanked 682's full strength without moving. Destroyed 3 Keter-class SCPs in the time it takes most MTF units to deploy. What exactly do you propose we contain it with? We've contained reality benders before. We have protocols. This isn't a reality bender. Reality benders manipulate local physics. That thing, O5-1 paused, reviewing footage, imposes its will on reality. There's a difference. Then what is it? Unknown. Preliminary analysis suggests extreme psychic capabilities, physical resilience beyond any human baseline, possible divinity-class entity. Like 343? No. 343 claims to be God and manipulates reality to support that claim. This entity doesn't claim anything. It simply acts, and reality accommodates. O5-5 cleared their throat. We need to make contact. Determine its intentions. It eliminated threats to the facility that suggests possible alignment with Foundation goals. Or it simply eliminates anything it perceives as dangerous, regardless of our containment. Either way, we need information. I propose we send someone to make first contact. Who? It killed 3 unstoppable SCPs. What personnel could possibly? Dr. Clef, O5-1 said. If anyone can talk to a potential God-class entity and survive, it's him. Murmurs of agreement. Motion carries. Alert Dr. Clef. Prepare first contact protocols. And someone figure out what to call this thing. Preliminary designation. SCP. Emperor. O5-3 suggested. Classification pending interview results. Approved. Meeting adjourned. And everyone, pray this entity is friendly. Because if it's hostile, we don't have anything that can stop it. Dr. Alto Clef received his orders while cleaning his shotgun in his office. Make contact with a potential God-class entity that just killed 3 Keter SCPs. Great. Just another Tuesday. He holstered his weapon, grabbed his cigarettes, and headed toward the central facility. On the security feeds, he watched the golden figure walking through corridors with casual certainty, personnel scrambling to get out of his path. Let's see if gods are as impressive up close as they are on camera. Meanwhile, the Emperor had reached the heart of Site-19. His psychic senses swept through the facility, cataloging anomalies. He detected thousands of them, creatures, objects, phenomena, some benign, many dangerous, a few absolutely catastrophic. This Foundation, he mused. They collect abominations like relics, store them underground like artifacts, but they do not destroy them. I'm Zero. He paused at a containment cell door. Inside, sensors detected SCP-173, a statue that moved when not observed, killing through neck snapping. Curious methodology, the Emperor continued. In the Imperium, we would have destroyed these threats immediately. Yet here, they are preserved, studied, contained. His eyes narrowed. The question is, why? What purpose does containing unkillable monsters serve? He decided to find out. And if the answer displeased him, he would purge this facility as he'd purged 1,000 others across the galaxy, for humanity's protection, whether they wanted it or not. Behind him, Dr. Clef entered the corridor, cigarette dangling from his lips. "Hey," Clef called out. "Big golden guy. Yeah, you. We need to talk." The Emperor turned, his ancient gaze falling on the human approaching him. "You are not afraid," the Emperor observed. "Oh, I'm terrified. I'm just really good at hiding it." Clef took a drag from his cigarette. "Name's Dr. Alto Clef. I work here. You just killed 3 of our most dangerous SCPs, and the O5 Council would like to know. Are you planning to kill more, or can we talk about this?" The Emperor studied Clef for a long moment. Then, to Clef's surprise, the Emperor smiled slightly. "You have courage. Facing me, unarmed and unafraid. That is refreshing." The smile faded. "Very well. I will speak with your council. But know this, I am not contained. I am not catalogued. I am the Emperor of mankind, and I have questions about your Foundation's methods." "Fair enough. Follow me. And, maybe don't kill anything else until we've had a chance to explain. That depends entirely on what you are containing." "I've Gentis," Clef sighed. "Yeah, that's what I was afraid of." They walked together toward the interview chambers, the Emperor's golden form casting long shadows in the red emergency lighting. And across Site-19, thousands of contained SCPs sensed his presence. Some cowered, some raged, and some waited to see what a being of true power would do when confronted with the Foundation's darkest secrets. The interview chamber was deliberately Spartan: gray walls, a metal table, 2 chairs, one-way mirror for observation. Dr. Clef sat on one side, cigarette smoke curling toward ventilation grills that struggled to keep up. The Emperor of mankind sat on the other side, or rather, he occupied the space, his 14-foot frame making the reinforced chair look like children's furniture. His golden armor gleamed under fluorescent lighting, casting reflections that seemed to move independently. Behind the mirror, Site Director Espinosa watched with half the O5 Council observing via secure feed. "Let's start simple," Clef said, clicking his pen. "Name? I am the Emperor of mankind." "Right. And your planet of origin?" "Terra, Earth, the cradle of humanity." The Emperor paused. "Though not this Earth. I perceive dimensional variance. Your timeline diverged from mine approximately 11,000 years ago." Clef made a note. "So you're from an alternate dimension. That tracks with the dimensional readings we got from your arrival." He looked up. "What brought you here?" "A warp anomaly during the Great Crusade. My flagship, the Bucephalus, encountered a spatial tear near the Ghoul stars. The Geller fields collapsed. I was pulled through before they could be restored. The warp? Your universe does not have it. Consider it fortunate. The warp is hell in the most literal sense. A dimension of psychic energy where daemons dwell and gods of chaos reign." The Emperor's eyes flickered with ancient memory. "I have fought in that hell for 10,000 years, held back its tides, prevented humanity's extinction 100 times over." "Modest, aren't you? It is not boasting if it is fact." Clef grinned despite himself. "Fair point. So you're a warrior? A protector?" "I am humanity's Emperor. Its guardian, its necessary tyrant." The Emperor leaned forward slightly. "For 15,000 years, I have guided humanity from the shadows, accelerated its evolution, protected it from threats it cannot comprehend. The Eldari, the Rangda, the Men of Iron, chaos itself, all would have destroyed humanity without my intervention. And now you're here, in our dimension, where you promptly killed 3 of our most dangerous SCPs. I eliminated 3 abominations. There is a difference. Not from our perspective. Those SCPs were contained, under control. You destroyed decades of research. Research? The Emperor's voice hardened. You research monsters? Study creatures designed to kill humanity? For what purpose? Understanding. Knowledge. Some anomalies can be weaponized. Others provide insight into physics we don't understand. And some, like 682, are simply too dangerous to destroy because we don't know what would happen. 682 is destroyed. Nothing happened except its death. Because you're whatever you are. We don't have your capabilities. The Emperor was silent for a moment, his psychic senses reading Clef's surface thoughts. The man was genuinely brave, terrified but functional. And honest, mostly. He believed what he was saying. Your foundation, the Emperor said slowly. It contains threats rather than eliminates them, preserves monsters rather than purges them. This is inefficient. It's pragmatic. We can't destroy everything anomalous. Some anomalies are beneficial, others are informational, and some are containable but not destructible, so we lock them away where they can't hurt anyone. And when containment fails, Clef's expression darkened. People die. But fewer than would die if we just destroyed everything without understanding it first. A gamble. You risk catastrophic breach for the sake of knowledge. A calculated gamble. We've prevented 17 ZK-class end-of-reality scenarios in the last decade alone. Whatever our methods, they work. The Emperor studied Clef intently. You believe that? Truly believe your methodology is correct? I believe it's the best option we have. And if I told you I have seen 1,000 civilizations make that exact argument, that I have watched species fall because they preserved threats for study rather than eliminating them, that arrogance, masquerading as pragmatism, has doomed entire galaxies. Clef took a long drag from his cigarette. Then I'd say our galaxy hasn't fallen yet. We're still here, still containing threats, still protecting humanity. For now, the words hung in the air. Finally, Clef stubbed out his cigarette. Look, I get it. You're powerful. You've seen things we can't imagine. You probably think we're idiots playing with fire. But this is our universe, our Earth, our humanity. We've been doing this for decades, and we're pretty good at it. You lost containment of 3 Keter-class entities simultaneously. That is not pretty good. Fair point. But we would have recontained them, eventually. At what cost? How many personnel would have died while you eventually solved the problem? Clef didn't have an answer for that. The Emperor stood, his massive frame filling the small room. I will reserve judgment on your Foundation's methods. For now. But know this, Doctor. Clef, I have not survived 15 millennia by allowing threats to fester. If I perceive your containment as insufficient, I will act, with or without your permission. That's what I was afraid of. Behind the mirror, O-1 spoke into their comm. Terminate interview. And someone get me everything we have on God-class entities. If he decides we're a threat, we need contingencies. What kind of contingencies work on something that killed 682 inches 3 minutes? I don't know. But we'd better figure it out fast. The O5 Council made a decision that, in retrospect, was either brilliant or catastrophically stupid. Deploy SCP-343 to make contact with SCP, Emperor. See how they interact. SCP-343, known to personnel as God, was a reality-bending entity that claimed divine status. It could manipulate probability, alter perceptions, and seemingly exist outside normal physical constraints. It was friendly, cooperative, and utterly convinced of its own omnipotence. The Foundation had never been able to disprove the claim. They brought 343 to the central courtyard where the Emperor stood, his psychic senses still cataloging the facility's thousands of contained anomalies. 343 appeared via spatial manipulation, simply existing where it hadn't been moments before. It took the form of a kindly older gentleman in casual clothes, smiling warmly. Ah, 343, said pleasantly. Another lost soul seeking answers. Welcome, my child. I am. The Emperor turned, and his gaze fell on 343 with the weight of a collapsing star. 343's smile faltered. The psychic pressure emanating from the Emperor was overwhelming. 343 had encountered powerful beings before reality benders, dimensional entities, cosmic horrors. But this was different. This wasn't power borrowed or stolen. This was fundamental, intrinsic, as if the universe itself bent around this being's will. "You are not God," the Emperor said flatly. 343 recovered quickly, smile returning. "And yet, I exist beyond normal constraints. I shape reality with thought. I am omnipresent within this facility. By any definition, you are a type green reality bender. Powerful, yes, but not divine, not omnipotent, not even particularly ancient." The Emperor took a step forward. "You hide behind delusions of divinity because you lack the courage to face what you truly are. A human who gained power beyond their comprehension and constructed a fantasy to cope with it." 343's smile disappeared entirely. You don't understand. I am beyond your judgment. I exist outside normal physical." The Emperor's psychic power surged. It wasn't an attack, not directly. It was simply his presence, fully manifesting the psychic might of a being who had fought gods, who had stared into the warp and emerged unbroken, who carried the weight of humanity's survival across millennia. 343 felt it like a physical blow. His reality-bending abilities, which allowed him to manipulate local space-time with ease, simply stopped working. Not suppressed, not overwhelmed, just irrelevant in the face of something greater. "Impossible," 343 whispered. I am God. I am." "You are a child playing with matches," the Emperor interrupted. "I have fought the Chaos Gods themselves. Khorne, Tsiench, Nurgle, Slaanesh, entities that make your power look like parlor tricks. They are gods, in the truest sense beings of pure psychic energy sustained by the faith and emotion of trillions. And even they cannot claim omnipotence." He leaned closer, and 343 actually stumbled backward, something personnel had never seen him do. "You are not God. You are a talented psyker who convinced himself of divinity because the alternative, accepting that you are merely powerful rather than supreme, terrifies you." The Emperor's eyes blazed with golden light. "Let me show you what true power looks like." His psychic consciousness invaded 343's mind not subtly, but with the force of a battering ram. He tore through 343's mental defenses as if they were tissue paper, exposing the reality bender's true nature. 343 screamed. For the first time in decades, SCP-343 felt fear, felt vulnerability, felt small. The Emperor saw everything. The accident that gave 343 his powers, the gradual descent into delusion, the construction of the God persona to avoid confronting the trauma of his transformation. All of it laid bare. When the Emperor withdrew, 343 collapsed to his knees, trembling. "You are not evil," the Emperor said, his voice gentler now. "Merely lost, hiding from yourself behind a mask of omnipotence. But you are no God, and pretending otherwise serves no one." 343 looked up, tears streaming down his face. "Then, what am I?" "A human. With power, yes, but still human, still fallible, still worthy of existing, but not of worship." The Emperor turned away. "Perhaps facing that truth will allow you to actually use your abilities for humanity's benefit rather than your own ego." He walked away, leaving 343 kneeling in the courtyard, his entire worldview shattered. In the observation room, Dr. Clef whistled low. He just broke 343. Psychologically broke him. With words. "More than words," a researcher muttered. "Psychic assault." He invaded 343's mind and deconstructed his entire personality. Is 343 still contained? They checked the monitors. 343 was still there, but changed, diminished, no longer radiating the absolute confidence that had characterized him. Contained? Yes. Useful? Unknown. He's having an existential crisis. Site Director Espinoza rubbed her temples. Added to the report. SCP. Emperor neutralized SCP-343's psychological defenses. Classification of 343 under review. Ma'am, if he can do that to our God-class entity, what else can he affect? I don't want to find out. Get me containment protocols for. The alarm started screaming again. But this time, they were different. Lower frequency. More urgent. What now? Oh God. It's SCP-2317. The chains are weakening. Something's triggering the containment failure. Maria's blood went cold. SCP-2317, the entity they called the Scarlet King's avatar, the Apocalypse-class threat chained beneath reality itself. Why is it activating now? Unknown, but sensors detect massive dimensional instability near its containment chamber. Something's drawing its attention. Maria looked at the feed showing the Emperor walking through the facility. Him. It senses him. And it's waking up. Deep beneath Site-19, in a chamber that technically existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously, SCP-2317 stirred. The entity was vast, incomprehensible, a being that existed beyond conventional reality, chained by rituals older than human civilization. Its true form was impossible to perceive. Attempting to do so caused immediate psychological breakdown. But its presence could be felt, and right now, it was agitated. The chains holding it, each one a conceptual binding woven from mathematics, faith, and sheer human will, rattled. One of them showed hairline fractures. In the containment observation post, Dr. Hughes watched in horror as readings spiked. Chain 7 showing stress fractures. Chain 4 is at 89% integrity. Chain 1 is, oh no, Chain 1 is starting to fray. If the chains broke, SCP-2317 would breach containment. And if 2317 breached containment, reality would end. Not just Earth, not just the solar system. Reality itself would be consumed by the Scarlet King's will, transformed into a hellscape of eternal suffering. What triggered this? Unknown, but dimensional sensors detect a massive psychic presence moving through the facility. It's like 2317 is responding to something it recognizes. Hughes pulled up camera feeds, tracking the golden figure moving through corridors. SCP, Emperor. He's what it's sensing. Why would? Because they're similar. Not identical, but similar. Both are beings of immense power. Both exist partially outside normal reality. 2317 sees him as, what? A rival? A threat? A kindred spirit. The chains rattled harder. We need to keep them separated. If Emperor gets close to 2317's containment, too late. The Emperor had already descended to the sub-levels, his psychic senses guiding him toward the strongest anomalous presence in the facility. He reached the chamber marked with warnings in 15 languages. Lethal cognitohazard, Keter class, Apocalypse level threat, do not enter. The Emperor pushed the door open. Inside, the chamber was vast, impossibly vast, its dimensions extending beyond the facility's physical space. And at its center, suspended in chains of pure conceptual force, was SCP-2317, or rather, an avatar of the Scarlet King. Even the Emperor, who had faced demon primarchs and chaos gods, felt the entity's weight. This was no mere warp entity. This was something fundamental. A being woven into the structure of this reality itself. The entity's eyes, if they could be called, that focused on the Emperor. When it spoke, the voice bypassed sound entirely, resonating directly in the Emperor's mind. Another God King. Another false shepherd. You reek of the warp anathema. You are kin to chaos. I am nothing like the ruinous powers, the Emperor replied, his voice steady. I am their antithesis, their eternal enemy. For 10,000 years I have held them back, and yet you are cut from the same cloth. Power sustained by faith. Existence dependent on worship. You are a god, whether you admit it or not. I am a guardian. Nothing more. Lies. The chains rattled, one cracking further. You are what I am, a being beyond mortality, beyond death, We are the apex of existence, God King, and this reality is too small for both of us. The entity pulled against its chains, and reality itself groaned under the stress. You will not breach containment, the Emperor said firmly. Not while I stand here. You cannot stop me. I am the Scarlet King. I am the end of all things. I have existed since before your species crawled from the mud, and I will exist long after your Imperium is dust. Perhaps, but not today. The Emperor raised his hands, and golden psychic power flooded the chamber. The psychic pressure in the chamber became almost solid. Two beings of unimaginable power faced each other across the dimensional threshold, one chained, one free, one seeking destruction, one enforcing order. The Scarlet King's avatar pulled harder against its chains. Chain 7 shattered completely, dissolving into mathematical paradoxes. Yes, break the chains. Let me show you what true power means. No, the Emperor said simply. He thrust his consciousness forward, psychic energy wrapping around the broken chain. Where the chain had been mathematical concepts and human willpower, the Emperor replaced it with raw psychic force, his own will substituting for the broken binding. The chain reformed, not as it had been, but as something new. Golden light wove through the conceptual structure, reinforcing it beyond its original strength. The Scarlet King roared a sound that made reality itself crack. Impossible. Those chains took thousands of your species to create. You cannot. I am not one human. I am the culmination of human potential, the anathema to everything that would destroy humanity. And you, the Emperor's eyes blazed, are simply another daemon that must be bound. His psychic power surged, targeting each chain in sequence. Chain 4 reinforced, Chain 1 repaired and strengthened, Chain 9 rebuilt from foundations the original creators had never imagined. The Scarlet King thrashed, reality bending around it as the entity fought back. It was older than the Emperor, more fundamental to this universe. It had power beyond measure. But the Emperor had spent 10,000 years fighting beings just as powerful in the warp itself. He knew how to bind daemons, how to cage gods, how to impose his will on entities that thought themselves beyond constraint. You dare. I am eternal. I am. You are contained, the Emperor interrupted, and you will remain so. The psychic battle raged for 17 minutes. From the observation post, it looked like reality itself was tearing apart around the containment chamber. Dimensional breaches opened and sealed. Mathematical laws rewrote themselves. Causality became optional. But slowly, inevitably, the Emperor gained ground. Each chain he reinforced became stronger than before. Each binding he touched was woven with psychic power that drew from the Emperor's own nearly limitless reserves. Finally, the Scarlet King's avatar realized it was not winning this fight. We shall meet again, anathema. When these chains eventually weaken, when your attention turns elsewhere, I will break free, and I will remember your interference. Then I will bind you again, as many times as necessary. For as long as humanity requires protection, the Emperor's voice was absolute. You are powerful, ancient, perhaps even eternal, but you are not unstoppable, and I have eternity to prove it. The final chain locked into place, reinforced beyond anything the Foundation had managed. The Scarlet King's presence receded, the entity withdrawing into dormancy, not defeated, but checked, contained more thoroughly than it had been in centuries. The Emperor lowered his hands, the golden light fading. In the observation post, Dr. Hughes stared at the readings in disbelief. All chains at 200% integrity, double what they were before the incident. The dimensional stress is gone, 2,317 it's more contained than it's been since we discovered it. How long will it last? Hughes ran calculations. If these readings are accurate, centuries, maybe longer. He didn't just repair the containment. He improved it, made it stronger than we ever could. Site Director Espinosa's voice came over the comm. Get the Emperor out of that chamber, and prepare a full report for the O5 Council. We need to reassess everything we know about containment protocols. After the intensity of facing the Scarlet King's avatar, the Emperor continued his systematic evaluation of the facility. He had encountered dozens of anomalies so far. Some he'd neutralized. Others he'd simply observed and moved on, deeming them non-threatening. But his presence had put the entire facility on edge. Personnel evacuated corridors before he arrived. MTF units maintained observation distance, which meant staying as far away as possible while still technically monitoring. The Emperor was aware of this fear. Had felt it countless times across 15 millennia. Humanity feared what it couldn't understand, and he was perhaps the most incomprehensible being they'd ever encountered. It was tiring. He turned a corner into a low-security containment wing and encountered something unexpected. A small, orange, gelatinous blob rolling down the corridor toward him. SCP-999, the tickle monster. The Emperor stopped, his tactical assessment immediately categorizing the entity. Semi-solid, anomalous composition, emits psychological effects in proximity, appears non-hostile. 999 stopped as well, its simple consciousness sensing the massive presence before it. For a moment, the two beings simply regarded each other, the towering God Emperor in golden armor, and the small orange blob that exuded pure happiness. Then, 999 rolled forward cautiously. It reached the Emperor's armored boot and nuzzled it, affectionately, making small, happy gurgling sounds. The Emperor looked down at the creature. His psychic senses analyzed its nature, an entity of pure, positive emotion. No malice, no hidden agenda, just innocent joy and desire to make others happy. For the first time since arriving in this universe, the Emperor felt something other than analytical assessment or combat readiness. He felt warmth, not physical warmth, emotional warmth. The creature's anomalous happiness aura was affecting him, bypassing his psychic defenses not through power but through sheer innocent genuineness. It reminded him of something, of why he fought, of what humanity was capable of becoming when freed from suffering and fear, of the dream he'd carried for 15,000 years. Slowly, the Emperor knelt down to 999's level. The small creature immediately rolled closer, nuzzling his gauntleted hand. And for just a moment, a brief, fleeting moment, the Emperor smiled. Not the tactical expression he showed subordinates, not the mask he wore for humanity, a genuine smile, small but real. "You are not an abomination," he said softly, his voice carrying none of its usual commanding weight. "You are hope, innocence, what I fight to preserve across all of human space." 999 gurgled happily, clearly pleased by the attention. The Emperor extended one armored finger, and 999 wrapped itself around it playfully. "In 10,000 years of war, I have forgotten that creatures like you can exist, that not all anomalies are threats, that some," he paused, "are simply good." He sat there for a full minute, allowing 999 to play with his armor, the small creature leaving trails of orange goo that evaporated into sparkles of pure joy. Watching from security cameras, Dr. Bright nearly dropped his coffee. Is the God Emperor playing with 999? "Looks like it," a researcher confirmed. First recorded instance of SCP. Emperor displaying non-combat behavior. 999 affects everyone eventually, even reality benders. Even gods, apparently. The Emperor finally stood, gently setting 999 back on the floor. "You should be protected," he said, "not contained, celebrated. Humanity needs more like you in this dark galaxy." 999 rolled happily in place, as if understanding. The Emperor continued down the corridor, but something had changed. His posture was slightly less rigid, his psychic presence slightly less overwhelming. He had been reminded of why his crusade mattered, and in this moment, facing a universe of contained horrors, that reminder was precious beyond measure. The O5 Council convened for an emergency session in their secure chamber. 13 voices debated the golden figure that had invaded their facility, killed multiple Keter-class SCPs, reinforced their most dangerous containment, and somehow manage to have a tender moment with SCP-999. We need to make a decision. Ofiva Negative once stated, SCP, Emperor, is too powerful to contain conventionally, too knowledgeable to manipulate, and based on behavioral analysis, potentially sympathetic to Foundation goals. You want to recruit him? Ofiva Negative 4 asked incredulously. I want to establish working relationship. He's proven capable of neutralizing threats we can't handle. If we could direct that capability toward anomalies that genuinely threaten humanity, and if he decides our containment methods are unacceptable, we've seen how he treats abominations. What happens when he decides we're abominations for keeping SCPs locked up? Then we deal with it. But right now, he's helped more than hurt. 682, 096, 106, all permanently neutralized. 2,317, more securely contained than ever. Even 343 has been reformed by having his ego destroyed. 343's God complex was always a liability. Now he's potentially more useful. The debate raged for 20 minutes before Ofiva Negative 1 called for a vote, all in favor of offering SCP, Emperor, a formal alliance. 7 voted yes. 6 abstained. Motion carries. Prepare diplomatic protocols. And someone get Dr. Clef. He's established rapport. Let's see if we can turn this disaster into an opportunity. Dr. Clef found the Emperor in the central courtyard, standing beneath stars visible through the facility's open roof sections. Big guy, Clef called out. Council wants to talk. Officially this time. The Emperor turned. I have been evaluating your containment protocols. Some are adequate, others are dangerously insufficient, and a few, he paused, are actually impressive. High praise from someone who killed 682. 682 was a mistake to contain. It should have been destroyed the moment you discovered it. But SCP-999. The Emperor's expression softened slightly. That one deserves protection, not containment. There is a difference. We protect all our SCPs. That's the point of containment. No. You imprison them, study them, use them. That is not protection. That is exploitation. Clef lit a cigarette. You're not wrong, but we exploit them for humanity's benefit. Better we control anomalies than let them run wild. A fair argument. One I have used myself countless times to justify the Imperium's methods. The Emperor's gaze was distant. The question is, where is the line between necessary control and tyrannical imprisonment? That's above my pay grade. But the Council wants to offer you something. An alliance. You help us neutralize existential threats. We provide resources and information about this universe. I need neither resources nor information. I am self-sufficient. You need a way home. Back to your universe. Your Imperium. Clef took a drag. We have dimensional technology. We've been studying cross-universal travel for decades. If you help us, we might be able to help you return. That got the Emperor's attention. You can breach dimensional barriers? We're working on it. But yeah, theoretically, with the right power source and calculations, we could open a stable portal to your universe. The Emperor considered this. His great crusade was ongoing. His sons, the Primarchs, would be managing the Imperium in his absence, but he was needed. Humanity's expansion across the stars required his guidance. What would this alliance entail? You help us eliminate or contain anomalies that pose existential threats. In exchange, we dedicate resources to finding you a way home. And, Clef hesitated, maybe you teach us some of your methods. Your universe survived for 10,000 years fighting horrors we can barely imagine. That knowledge could save lives here. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. I will consider it. But know this. I will not compromise humanity's safety for politics or pride. If I determine an anomaly is too dangerous to contain, I will eliminate it, regardless of your protocols. Fair enough, as long as you give us a chance to explain before you start purging. Acceptable. They stood in companionable silence for a moment. You know, Clef said, you're not what I expected. Most God-class entities are either malevolent or insane. You're reasonable. Terrifying but reasonable. I am not a god. I am simply what humanity needed me to be. A guardian, a tyrant, a necessary evil to ensure survival against an uncaring universe. That's the most honest thing any god has ever said to me. The Emperor almost smiled. Perhaps that is because I have never claimed divinity. I am merely a tool, a very powerful tool, but a tool nonetheless. One forged to protect humanity at any cost. Even if humanity doesn't always want your protection, especially then, free will is precious, but survival is paramount. And sometimes, the only way to preserve one is to temporarily constrain the other. Clef nodded slowly. Yeah, we deal with that dilemma every day. Welcome to the Foundation, big guy. Looks like you'll fit right in. The Emperor turned to face him fully. I have not agreed to join your Foundation, but I will help. For now, because your goals align with mine. Protect humanity from the darkness. That's all we ask. They walked back into the facility together, an unlikely alliance forming between the God Emperor and the Foundation that contained gods. And deep in the cosmos, other entities, older, darker, more malevolent, took notice of the Emperor's presence in this new universe. And they began making plans. The Emperor's temporary alliance with the Foundation lasted exactly 18 hours before he decided to take matters into his own hands. The turning point came when he accessed the Foundation's central database not through hacking or coercion, but by simply imposing his will on the security systems until they yielded. His psychic presence was so overwhelming that the digital barriers designed to stop reality benders simply stopped functioning. What he found disturbed him deeply. Thousands of SCPs, hundreds classified as Keter existential threats to humanity, dozens that had caused containment breaches resulting in mass casualties, and several that were, by the Foundation's own admission, contained only through luck and constant vigilance. In the facility's command center, alarms began blaring. CP, Emperor has breached database security, a technician shouted. He's accessing classified files, Keter documentation, O5 eyes-only material. Site Director Espinosa grabbed her comm. All MTF units to database server room. Establish perimeter. Do not engage unless... Ma'am, he's not in the server room. What? He's accessing the database psychically. From wherever he's standing, the servers are responding to his presence like he's physically interfacing. But he's 3 floors away. Maria closed her eyes. Of course. Why would a psychic god emperor need physical access to computers? Get me the O5 Council. Now. By the time the emergency call connected, the emperor had already finished his review, and he was not pleased. He walked through the facility's corridors with renewed purpose. His psychic senses locked onto specific containment cells. Personnel scrambled out of his way, recognizing the change in his demeanor. This was no longer an observer. This was a predator that had identified its prey. Dr. Clef intercepted him in Corridor 19B, slightly out of breath from running. Hey, big guy, what happened to giving us a chance to explain? The Emperor didn't slow his stride. I have reviewed your records. SCP-1983, a dimensional anomaly that claimed 17 D-Class personnel and 3 researchers in a single incident. Still contained, still studied. SCP-106. Wait, I eliminated that one. Good. Where are you going? To purge the threats you should have eliminated years ago. We have protocols, procedures. You can't just... The Emperor stopped and turned, his gaze falling on Clef with such intensity that the doctor actually took a step back. Doctor. In the 43 hours since I arrived, 3 containment breaches have occurred in other Foundation sites. CP-3001 experienced a critical failure. SCP-5000 activated without authorization. SCP-2935 nearly bridged containment. All of this while your personnel were distracted by my presence. Those are isolated incidents. Isolated. I reviewed your incident logs. In the past year alone, you have experienced 2,847 containment failures across all sites. 43 resulted in mass casualties. 17 nearly caused XK-class end-of-world scenarios. And you call this containment? Clef had no response. Your methodology is flawed, the Emperor continued. You preserve threats because you fear what destroying them might cause. But in doing so, you guarantee eventual catastrophic failure. It is not a matter of if, it is when. So what's your solution? Kill everything anomalous? No, but eliminate everything that poses existential risk. Your Keter class, your Apollyon entities, the anomalies that will eventually break free and destroy humanity. Those cannot be tolerated. We're working on permanent solutions. For how long? How many more casualties while you work on it? The Emperor's voice was not angry, just firm, absolute. I have spent 10,000 years fighting the very threats you now contain, and I have learned this truth. Mercy toward monsters is cruelty toward innocence. You cannot save everyone. Sometimes, you must choose. He turned and continued walking. Where are you going? Clef shouted after him. To the sublevels. You have an info hazard there. SCP-2718. An information pattern that drives humans to madness with knowledge of the afterlife. It has already compromised 17 personnel. How do you know about that's O5 classified? I know about it because it is radiating memetic corruption even through containment. Its very existence is a threat. The Emperor's eyes blazed with golden light. And I am going to eliminate it. Clef grabbed his comm. All units, SCP. Emperor is heading to the memetics wing. He's targeting 2718. Someone stop. No, wait. Don't try to stop him. Just observe and document. And pray he knows what he's doing. The memetics wing was the most secure section of Site-19. Info hazards information that could harm or kill simply by being known required extreme containment protocols. Personnel rotated every 4 hours. Amnestics were mandatory. And some info hazards were so dangerous that only specially trained memetics division operatives could even acknowledge their existence. SCP-2718 was the worst of them. It was information about the afterlife. Specifically, that consciousness persists after death, trapped in decaying flesh, experiencing eternal torment as the body decomposes. The information was so traumatic that anyone who learned it became psychologically compromised, often suicidal, sometimes homicidal. The Foundation contained it by never allowing the information to spread. Those who knew it were either amnesticized or put under permanent observation. The Emperor walked past 7 security checkpoints without stopping. Blast doors sealed behind him. Automated protocols trying to contain the breach. He simply raised a hand, and they opened again, their locks overridden by psychic will. In the observation room, Dr. Erickson watched in horror. He's entering the 2718 vault, without memetic inoculation, without psychological screening. He's going to... The Emperor entered the vault. Inside was a simple room with a single document on a table. The document contained SCP-2718. Reading it would compromise the reader instantly. The Emperor picked up the document and read it. Dr. Erickson held his breath, waiting for the psychological collapse, the signs of memetic infection. Nothing happened. The Emperor finished reading, set the document down, and looked directly at the observation camera. This is what you consider a threat? Knowledge of a painful afterlife? His voice was calm. I have witnessed the warp. I know what awaits souls consumed by chaos. Eternal torture in the realm of Slaanesh. Bodies torn apart and rebuilt infinitely in Khorne's domain. Minds fragmented across Tzeentch's labyrinth. Souls rotting in Nurgle's garden. He held up the document. This information is traumatic to humans because they are unprepared for such horror. But it is just information. And information can be destroyed. The Emperor's eyes blazed with psychic fire. The document ignited, not with normal flame, but with golden energy that consumed it at a molecular level. The information itself, the memetic pattern, was being burned away from reality. Dr. Erickson watched in disbelief as reading showed the info hazard disappearing, not contained, not suppressed, actually ceasing to exist as a concept. That's impossible. You can't destroy information. It's not physical matter. Information is pattern. The Emperor's voice came over the speakers. Pattern can be disrupted. especially by one who understands the fundamental nature of reality. The document was gone, completely, and with it, the memetic hazard. Everyone who'd been infected with SCP-2718-17 personnel under observation suddenly looked up in confusion as the traumatic knowledge simply left their minds. Not amnestication. The information itself no longer existed to remember. He cured them, Dr. Erickson whispered. He retroactively cured them by destroying the source material. The Emperor walked to the next containment cell. SCP-3125. A hostile conceptual entity that existed as pure information. It infected human consciousness, spreading through knowledge of itself. The Emperor read the containment procedures, learning what 3125 was. The entity immediately tried to infect him, spreading through his consciousness like a virus. It encountered the Emperor's psychic will and stopped. Not resisted. Stopped. As if hitting an absolute barrier. "You are an interesting construct," the Emperor said, addressing the entity directly. "A predator that feeds on thought itself, but you have encountered a mind you cannot consume." He focused, and golden light flooded the containment cell. SCP-3125 screamed a sound only psychics could hear as the Emperor's will physically manifested within the conceptual space it inhabited. He grabbed the entity's essence the way someone might grab a physical object and simply crushed it. The infohazard died, ceased to exist. Every copy, every instance, every fragment, all destroyed simultaneously as the Emperor purged it from reality at a fundamental level. "Two down," the Emperor said to himself. "How many more infohazards does this facility contain?" He continued systematically through the memetics wing. SCP-2747, SCP-4028, SCP-5999. One by one, infohazards that the Foundation had spent decades containing were simply destroyed by an intelligence too powerful to be affected by them and too skilled to allow them to continue existing. In the O5 Council Chamber, emergency session number 7 in 48 hours was underway. "He's destroying our research," O5-4 protested. "Years of memetic study. Gone. He's eliminating existential infohazards we could barely contain," O5-1 countered. "I'm more concerned about what he's going to target next. We need to stop him." "With what?" "He's immune to memetic effects, physical force, and reality manipulation. What exactly do you propose we use?" "Silence. Then we let him continue. And we document everything. At least we'll learn something from this disaster." The Emperor's purge continued for 3 days. He systematically moved through Site-19 and 2 adjacent facilities, identifying and neutralizing Keter-class threats. Some he destroyed outright. Others he downgraded by removing their most dangerous properties. A few, like SCP-999, he left completely alone, recognizing their benign nature. The Foundation scrambled to keep up, documenting each action, trying to predict his next target. Then he requested access to SCP-001. Not just any SCP-001 proposal. The one known as the Gate Guardian. In the O5 Council Chamber, the request caused immediate debate. "Absolutely not," O5-7 stated. 001 is off limits, even for him. He's eliminated 30 Keter-class SCPs in 3 days, O5-1 replied. "If we refuse, he'll go anyway. At least if we grant access, we can monitor. The Gate Guardian kills anyone who approaches it, even reality benders, even gods. Then let's see if he's actually unstoppable. Because if 001 can kill him, our problem is solved." The vote passed 8-5. Permission granted. The Gate Guardian's location was classified. Somewhere in the Middle East, a massive angelic entity guarded the entrance to what was allegedly the Garden of Eden. The entity was described as bearing a flaming sword, standing roughly 700 cubits tall, over 1,000 feet, and possessing absolute authority over its domain. It had killed every person who'd attempted to pass it. Every person except specifically designated Foundation personnel with proper credentials. The Emperor arrived at the location via Foundation transport, He stood before the massive angelic figure, taking in its form with ancient eyes that had seen daemon princes and living saints. "You are a powerful construct," the emperor observed, "bound to this place, given purpose by forces I do not fully understand in this reality." The gate guardian's voice resonated across dimensions. "Turn back. Only the worthy may enter the garden. I am the emperor of mankind. I do not turn back. Then you shall be tested." The guardian's flaming sword descended. The blade was not merely fire. It was conceptual erasure, a weapon designed to unmake things from existence. It had destroyed reality benders, nullified anomalies, ended immortal entities. It struck the emperor directly. The emperor caught the blade with one hand. His golden armor glowed as it absorbed the conceptual attack. The flaming sword, which could erase matter from reality, simply stopped against his palm. Impossible. Nothing survives the blade of Eden. I am not nothing. I am humanity's guardian, and I have caught the swords of daemon princes. Your blade, while impressive, is not the most dangerous weapon I have faced. The emperor pushed back, and the guardian's sword actually moved backward, forced away by someone with sufficient will to contest its authority. You possess strength beyond mortal ken, but strength is not worthiness. Then test me. I have walked through hell itself. Your trial will not break me." The guardian's eyes blazed with holy fire. It subjected the emperor to psychic assault, visions of humanity's sins, atrocities committed in the name of progress, the horrors of the Imperium's crusades. The emperor saw it all, acknowledged it all, did not flinch. "Yes," he said quietly, "I have done terrible things, condemned billions, committed genocide against species that threatened humanity, ruled with an iron fist because gentler hands would have failed. I am not good, but I am necessary." The visions intensified, showed him futures where his Imperium fell, where humanity was consumed by chaos, where everything he'd built crumbled to ash. "I know," the emperor replied. "I have always known failure was possible. But possibility of failure is not reason to cease trying. It is reason to fight harder." The guardian studied him for a long moment. "You are a shepherd who has sacrificed much, who carries the weight of species survival across millennia, who knows the cost of necessary evil. I am, then, you are worthy. Pass, God Emperor. But know this, the garden holds truths that will test even you." The guardian stepped aside. The emperor walked past it, entering the space beyond a place Foundation personnel had never been allowed to access. What he saw there, he never spoke of. When he emerged 30 minutes later, his expression was troubled, changed. Dr. Clef, who'd been monitoring from a safe distance, approached cautiously. "What did you see?" "Truth," the emperor replied. "About this reality, about why anomalies exist, about the nature of this universe." He paused. "I cannot share it. The knowledge would compromise you. But I will say this. Your foundation serves a more important purpose than you realize. That's not ominous at all. It is not meant to be. Simply, understand that some anomalies must be contained rather than destroyed. Not because you lack the power to eliminate them, but because their existence serves a function in maintaining reality's stability." Clef processed that. "So you're not going to destroy everything?" "No. Only the threats that truly endanger humanity. The rest," the emperor looked back at the guardian. "The rest serve purposes I am only beginning to understand." 3 days after the Gate Guardian incident, an emergency call came from Site-42. SCP-610, the flesh that hates, had breached containment. The infectious anomaly had spread beyond the quarantine zone, transforming a small Russian village into a nightmare of twisted flesh and absorbed humans. The infection was exponentially growing, doubling every 6 hours. The Foundation's response plan was simple: nuclear sterilization. Destroy the entire region before the infection spread beyond containment capacity. The Emperor heard about it and intercepted the authorization. "You will not deploy nuclear weapons," he stated flatly to the O5 Council via Secure Comm. "With respect, SCP, Emperor, this is Foundation protocol. 610 cannot be stopped by conventional means. We've tried everything. You have not tried me. He was on site within the hour, transported by Foundation aircraft to the quarantine zone. The infected area was horrific. Buildings had been transformed into organic structures, walls pulsing with veins, streets covered in flesh carpet that screamed when stepped on. The former villagers were now part of the infection, their bodies fused with others into massive amalgamations of suffering tissue. The infection spread by touch, by proximity, by mere proximity to infected material. It was unstoppable. The Emperor walked directly into it. Infected creatures, humanoid masses of corrupted flesh, lunged at him immediately. Tendrils of meat wrapped around his armor, attempting to assimilate him into the collective mass. The Emperor's psychic power flared. Golden fire erupted from his form, burning the tendrils away. Not normal fire, not even psychic force. Pure anathema to corruption, the same power he'd used to destroy daemons in the warp. The infected creatures recoiled, their flesh sizzling where the golden light touched. This infection, the Emperor said, his voice carrying across the zone. It is not merely biological. It is sustained by a psychic presence, a corrupted consciousness that drives the transformation. His psychic senses traced the infection to its source deep beneath the village, in catacombs that predated modern civilization. He descended. In the command post, Dr. Volkov watched via drone feed as the Emperor moved through tunnels of pulsing flesh, his golden form the only source of light. What is he looking for? The source, Clef replied via radio. Every infection has a patient zero. He's going to find it. The Emperor reached the heart of the infection. It was massive. A central mass of flesh, 50 feet across, pulsing with malevolent intelligence. This was not SCP-610 as the Foundation understood it. This was older. A fragment of something vast and terrible, a Sarkic god remnant, sleeping beneath the earth for millennia until accidentally awakened. The entity spoke directly into the Emperor's mind. Flesh. Glorious flesh. All shall be one. All shall be perfected in the union of meat. You are an echo of old night, the Emperor replied. Similar to the Homunculi covens, the flesh crafters of Camorra, I have purged your kind from 100 worlds. I am eternal. I am transformation. You cannot destroy me. I am change itself. No, you are corruption masquerading as evolution, and corruption must be burned away. The Emperor's psychic might intensify to levels that made the air shimmer. Golden flames erupted from his hands, not metaphorical flames, but actual psychic fire given physical form. He thrust both hands into the central mass. The entity screamed a sound that echoed psychically across the entire infection zone. The golden fire spread, consuming the god remnant from within, not just destroying tissue, but purging the very concept that animated the infection. The psychic consciousness binding 610 together was being burned away at its root. The entity thrashed, trying to spread faster, trying to escape, trying to corrupt the Emperor himself. It failed. The Emperor's incorruptibility was absolute. 15,000 years of resisting chaos had forged a will that could not be broken, could not be tainted, could not be compromised. The golden fire intensified. Throughout the quarantine zone, infected tissue began to die. Not slowly, instantly. The psychic link severing, the corruption burning away. The transformed humans, those few who still had intact neural tissue, reverting to normal. In 17 minutes, the Emperor burned away an infection that had taken root over decades. When he emerged from the catacombs, the village was silent. The flesh structures were dissolving into ash. The infected humans, those few still alive, collapsed, freed from the collective consciousness. Dr. Volkov stared at the readings in disbelief. SCP-610. It's gone, completely neutralized. Not just here. Our other containment sites are reporting the same thing. The infection is dying globally, all at once. He didn't just cure this village, Clef realized. He cured the entire species of 610, destroyed the source entity, and everything connected to it died. The Emperor stood in the center of the former infection zone, his armor scorched but intact. The threat is eliminated, he stated simply. No nuclear weapons necessary, no mass casualties, Surgical elimination of the source, and the infection dies. How did you? I have fought corruption across 10,000 years. I know how to burn it out at its roots. The Emperor turned to face the command post. Your protocols are inefficient. You seek to destroy symptoms while preserving the disease. I prefer to eliminate the disease entirely. The Emperor's reputation spread through the Foundation like wildfire. He was no longer just CP, Emperor. He was the being who had eliminated the unkillable, who had cured the incurable, who had bound the unbindable. Some personnel viewed him with awe, others with fear. A few with hope that perhaps, finally, humanity had a real chance against the anomalies that threatened it. Then SCP-001, when Daybreaks activated, the sun turned wrong. It happened without warning across multiple Foundation sites simultaneously. Personnel who'd been working day shifts suddenly stopped, looked at windows, and saw sunlight that was off. Wrong-colored, malevolent. Those who touched the sunlight began transforming, their flesh melting, reforming, joining together into massive amalgamations of human tissue that maintained consciousness but lost individuality. All units to underground shelters. Site Director Espinoza ordered across global channels. CP-001 has activated. When day breaks. Scenario in effect. All personnel avoid sunlight. The Emperor stood in Site-19's courtyard, looking up at the corrupted sun. Personnel screamed at him from underground. Get inside. The light will transform you. The Emperor did not move. Sunlight corrupted, malevolent, transformative bathed him in its glow. The transformation effect tried to activate, tried to melt his flesh, absorb his consciousness, add him to the collective mass. His Kryptonian-adjacent biology, enhanced by millennia of genetic perfection, rejected the corruption absolutely. Interesting, the Emperor said, studying his unchanged form. A corruption that spreads through solar radiation itself. Elegant, horrifying, but ultimately, just another form of corruption. He looked up at the sun, the true source of the anomaly, and he flew. In the underground bunker, Clef watched through shielded monitors as the Emperor's golden form rose into the sky. Is he insane? No one can survive that close to. He's not human, a researcher interrupted. We established that. Maybe he can. No one can survive flying into the sun. That's not about being human or not. That's physics. The Emperor ascended rapidly, breaking through the atmosphere, entering the void of space. The corrupted sun's influence intensified. Reality itself bent around it, the anomaly spreading outward in waves of transformed light. The Emperor flew directly into it. Inside the corrupted sun, the Emperor found the source. It was not a physical entity, not a creature or object. It was a fundamental alteration to the sun's nature. Reality itself had been rewritten to make sunlight dangerous. A perfect trap. Humanity depended on the sun for life. Making it kill them was elegant in its cruelty. The Emperor extended his psychic consciousness, analyzing the corruption at a quantum level. It was similar to warp taint. Not identical, but similar. A fundamental wrongness inserted into natural law, making something beneficial become lethal. He'd seen it before. Daemon corrupted stars, warp-touched celestial bodies. He knew how to purge them. The Emperor's psychic might erupted outward, flooding the sun with golden energy. He was not adding power to the star. He was imposing order, forcing reality to conform to natural law rather than anomalous corruption. The sun resisted. The anomaly was woven deep, sustained by forces the Emperor didn't fully understand in this universe. But he was stronger. For 17 minutes, the Emperor engaged in a battle that took place on a level beyond physical, imposing his will directly on reality itself, forcing the corrupted sun to revert to its natural state. On Earth, personnel in bunkers watched as the sun's color began to shift from wrong-colored to normal, from malevolent to neutral. The light, it's changing. Transformation reports are stopping. Personnel who'd begun transforming they're reverting. The flesh is separating. Dr. Clef stared at the monitors in absolute silence. He's curing the sun. He's actually curing the goddamn sun. The Emperor's psychic assault reached critical mass. The anomaly shattered. The sun returned to normal, just a star, doing what stars do, providing light and heat without malevolence. Across the globe, the transformation effect reversed. Amalgamated flesh separated back into individual humans. Consciousness returned to distinct minds. The nightmare ended. The Emperor descended from space, landing in Site-19's courtyard. His armor was scorched. His physical form showed signs of strain, even he had limits, and what he'd just done had pushed them. But he stood victorious. "The threat is neutralized," he announced. "Your sun is cleansed." Personnel emerged from bunkers, staring at normal sunlight in disbelief. How? I treated it as demon possession on a stellar scale, exorcised the corruption, forced reality to remember what it was supposed to be. The Emperor looked weary. "It required more effort than I anticipated. This universe's anomalies are persistent." Clef approached, cigarette dangling. "You just saved the world." Literally. When day breaks was supposed to be unstoppable. Nothing is unstoppable. Some things simply require sufficient force and will to stop. Most people can't fly into the sun and rewrite its fundamental nature. Then perhaps your species should focus on creating more beings who can. Evolution through genetic enhancement. Psychic awakening. You have the capability, you simply lack the will to pursue it. Before anyone could respond, the Emperor collapsed. Not dramatically, just a controlled descent to one knee. His massive form, finally acknowledging the toll of what he'd done. "Even gods have limits," Clef observed. "I am not a god," the Emperor replied quietly. "I am merely a man who is pushed beyond human limitations through necessity, and I have reached mine. Temporarily." Medical teams rushed forward, though they had no idea how to treat someone who'd just flown through the sun. The Emperor waved them off. "I require only rest. And sunlight, ironically. Your normal, uncorrupted sunlight. It will restore me." He sat in the courtyard, bathing in Earth's purified sun, his golden armor slowly repairing itself. And across the Foundation, personnel realized they owed their existence to the being they'd initially classified as a threat. 1 week after the When Day Breaks incident, the Emperor had recovered fully. In that week, he had neutralized 47 major SCPs, destroyed 17, contained 12 more effectively, downgraded 18 from Keter to Euclid or Safe. The Foundation's threat landscape had been fundamentally altered. The O5 Council convened for a final meeting with him. All 13 members appeared via hologram the first time they'd done so simultaneously for a single entity. O5-1 spoke first. "CP, Emperor, you have exceeded all expectations and defied all predictions. You've accomplished in 1 week what would have taken us decades, if ever." "I did what was necessary," the Emperor replied. "Nothing more. You destroyed our most dangerous threats, cured our most persistent infections, even purified our goddamn sun. Why? Because they threatened humanity, and I am humanity's guardian. That purpose does not change across universes." O5-5 leaned forward. "We've completed our analysis of dimensional technology. We believe we can open a portal to your universe, send you home to your Imperium." The Emperor was silent for a moment. "I have considered that. Returning to my great crusade, to my sons, to the Imperium that requires my guidance." He looked at the assembled council. "But I have also considered what I've seen here, which is a humanity that faces horrors beyond comprehension, yet does so without superhuman soldiers, without psychic wards, without the technological advantages of my era. You fight with courage and ingenuity and, yes, questionable containment protocols, but you fight nonetheless." The Emperor stood, his full height making the holographic counselors seem small. "You asked me once what I wanted. I want humanity to survive, in all timelines, in all universes, mine and yours. And your Foundation, flawed as it is, serves that purpose." "So you'll stay?" O5-7 asked. "No. My Imperium needs me. The Great Crusade cannot succeed without my leadership. But I will leave you with something more valuable than my presence." He gestured, and golden light filled the chamber. In each O5 council member's mind, knowledge flooded, not overwhelming, not forced, but offered. Techniques for psychic defense, methods for binding warp entities, strategies for containing corruption that the Emperor had developed across 15 millennia. I give you the tools I use to build an empire across the stars. How you use them is your choice. O5-1 staggered from the psychic transfer. This is centuries of knowledge. Use it wisely. Do not repeat my mistakes. Do not become the tyrant I became. But do not shy from necessary action either. Balance is difficult, but it is essential. The Emperor walked toward the courtyard where a dimensional rift was being prepared. Foundation scientists working from his own knowledge to tear through reality itself. Dr. Clef intercepted him one last time. You never answered my original question. What should we call you? The Emperor paused. In my universe, I have many names. The Emperor, the Omnissiah, the Anathema. But here, he actually smiled slightly. Here, you may call me what I have always been. Humanity's hope that one day, it will be strong enough to survive without me. That's not a name, it is a purpose. And purpose is more important than names. The dimensional rift opened a tier in reality that led back to the Warhammer 40K universe. Through it, Clef could see glimpses of impossible things. Massive warships, legions of superhuman soldiers, galaxies aflame with war. The Emperor stepped toward it, then paused one final time. Dr. Clef, your foundation contains one entity I have not addressed. SCP-999. The Tickle Monster. Yeah? What about it? Protect it. At all costs. In my universe, there is a saying, hope is the first step on the road to disappointment. But without hope, humanity falls to despair. And despair opens the door to chaos. The Emperor looked back, his ancient eyes carrying weight beyond measure. Your 999 is hope incarnate. It is more valuable than all your weapons combined. Never forget that. I won't. The Emperor nodded and stepped through the rift. The portal closed behind him, reality sealing itself with a sound like distant thunder. Dr. Clef stood alone in the courtyard, looking at where the Emperor had vanished. Well, he muttered, that happened. The O5 Council's post-incident report was extensive. The Emperor's visit fundamentally altered Foundation understanding of what is possible regarding SCP containment and neutralization. Techniques he shared are being studied and implemented across all sites. Most significantly, Foundation philosophy shifted. While containment remains primary mission, permanent neutralization of existential threats is now actively pursued rather than indefinitely postponed. The Emperor's final words to Dr. Clef have been taken to heart. SCP-999 has been reclassified from safe to Thaumiel, a Foundation asset rather than merely a contained anomaly. It now serves in morale support and psychological counseling roles across multiple sites. Humanity endures, we contain, we protect, we survive. And if necessary, we remember that sometimes protection requires eliminating threats rather than merely locking them away. The Emperor taught us that, and we will not forget. Across dimensions, in the Warhammer 40K universe, the Emperor of Mankind returned to his flagship, the Bucephalus. His Primarch sons, genetically engineered demigods who led his Space Marine legions, surrounded him immediately. Father, Rogel Dorn, Primarch of the Imperial Fists, was first to speak. You vanished for a week. The crusade continued without me, as it must, the Emperor replied. I was detained. In another universe. Another universe? Horus, Primarch of the Luna Wolves, stepped forward. What did you find there? The Emperor was quiet for a moment, remembering. SCP-682 destroyed, the Scarlet King bound, the Sun cleansed, and most of all, SCP-999, pure hope in a dark universe. I found humanity, he said finally, facing impossible horrors, without superhuman soldiers, without me, and they endured, they survived, they even thrived, in their way. Impressive, Magnus the Red observed. What did you learn? That humanity does not need me to survive. They need knowledge, tools, guidance, but not a tyrant. The emperor looked at his sons, and that perhaps our imperium should be built not on my rule alone, but on humanity's collective strength. His sons exchanged glances, uncertain what this meant. Continue the crusade, the emperor commanded. But remember, we fight to preserve humanity's future, not to rule it forever. There is a difference. He walked toward his chambers, leaving his sons to contemplate his words. And in his private thoughts, the emperor smiled, remembering a small orange blob that had reminded him why he fought. Hope was not weakness. It was humanity's greatest weapon. And perhaps, one day, humanity would be strong enough to wield it without needing an emperor at all. That was the true dream. That had always been the dream.